Hey, what's up? It's nice to see you, or not see you, but at least psychologically connect with you. And I hope you're doing okay today, and still fighting and still kind of, doing what you can to stay positive and support the people around you. And I'm just trying to distract you for 5 minutes to give you a kind of interesting interview, little video. Hopefully, we're gonna look today at this idea of what does Orwellian mean. Okay, now Orwellian, for starters, is obviously kind of like a play on the last name of George Orwell, who's a famous writer who wrote a bunch of books, but usually this term is used to refer to things that would make sense within the world and the state that's presented in the book 1984. And there's also some references. Sometimes people will use this more loosely to refer to stuff from Animal Farm too, but usually it's about Orwell's ideas from 1984. So let's check out what this TED Ed video has to say. It's a pretty quick one, but I think you'll find it interesting. And I hope you're doing okay, having a decent day. And let's jump into this. All right, cheers, or not cheers. I usually say that at the end. Just I don't know. On to the next slide. Love you guys, and let's check this video out. Digital Academy.
If you've watched the news or followed politics, chances are you've heard the term Orwellian thrown around in one context or another. But have you ever stopped to think about what it really means or why it's used so often? The term was named after British author Eric Blair, known by his pen name George Orwell. Because his most famous work, the novel 1984, depicts an oppressive society under a totalitarian government, Orwellian is often used simply to mean authoritarian. But using the term in this way not only fails to fully convey Orwell's message, it actually risks doing precisely what he tried to warn against. Orwell was indeed opposed to all forms of tyranny, spending much of his life fighting against anti-democratic forces of both the left wing and the right. But he was also deeply
Of both the left and the right. That's an important point.
concerned with how such ideologies proliferate. And one of his most profound insights was the importance that language plays in shaping our thoughts and opinions.
The words we use.
The government of 1984's Oceania controls its people's actions and speech in some ways that are obvious. Their every move and word is watched and heard.
Okay, so look at this for a sec, because I don't know how much he's going to go into this, but this is an important scene to understand 1984, especially if you haven't read it, or there is a movie that exists about it. That's not bad. But the book is excellent. So picture this: everybody has their own little room. So he has his own little room, and there's basically, remember 1984, I think was written in, I want to say like the mid 30s. So it was the future and what they thought the future would be like, right? Talking to you guys in 2020, you can basically picture that as like a big screen TV that had FaceTime on it constantly that you couldn't turn off. And they all had that giving government supported messages constantly, and they weren't allowed to turn it off. And you weren't allowed to, he had that one chair in the corner that was the one space that he could sit and crouch and not be seen by the screen. So there's kind of a lot going on in this image here, and also how you see him brushing his teeth with Big Brother. It's like this, you can never get away from this surveillance state propaganda machine, Big Brother.
And the threat of what happens to those who step out of line is always looming overhead. Other forms of control are not so obvious. The population is inundated with a constant barrage of propaganda, made up of historical facts and statistics manufactured in the Ministry of Truth. The Ministry of Peace is the military. Labor camps are...
This is classic Orwellian doublespeak. The Ministry of Truth is actually involved in deceiving the public. The Minister of Peace is actually the military. So this is another important thing of Orwell. Like he's saying, like the meaning of words is actually changing, and language doesn't mean what we think it means, and it's being used almost to strategically position things.
Called joy camps. Political
Joy
prisoners are
camps.
detained and tortured in the ministry of love. This deliberate irony is an example of doublespeak, when words are used not to convey meaning, but to undermine it, corrupting the very ideas they refer to.
Yeah.
The regime's control of language goes even further, eliminating words from the English language to create the official dialect of Newspeak, a crudely limited collection of acronyms.
So in the book Newspeak, which is just the word new and speak, it's like the new language is all the government approved words. These are all the words you're allowed to say and not get fired. These are all the words you're allowed to say and not be accused of treason. These are all the words that have been pre-approved for you to post. You know, this doesn't include social media in his book, but it's the things you're allowed to say. Right? And then the thought police enforce that you don't say things that you're not allowed to say.
And simple concrete nouns, lacking any words complex enough to encourage nuanced or critical thought. This has an effect on the psyche Orwell calls doublethink, a hypnotic state of cognitive dissonance in which one is compelled to disregard their own perception in place of the officially dictated version of events.
Boom. Okay, so that was a decently timed pause. In this book, the author says, so he writes in his diary, freedom is the ability to say that 2 + 2 = 4. And it always equals 4. And it never equals 5. Even if your government says it equals 5, even if all your friends and family say it equals 5, even if you're being tortured to say it's 5. Right? And so some people might see this and be like, well, this is a stupid, like 2 + 2 = 4. That's what freedom is. What he's really saying has nothing to do with math. What he's saying is freedom is the ability to say truth and not have to, well, regurgitate what the Ministry of Information has pre-approved that you're allowed to say. They're like literally torching him on a if you want to just Google, if you just Google 1984 and then 2 + 2 = 5, you'll find it immediately. I shared it in class. I used to share it in class, but for the last few years I've actually stopped because I had a few negative reactions. Not the students I've had the best students of all time, but negative reaction in the sense of I think it's just a bit traumatizing. The video is actually really intense because it's showing them torturing him into saying that 2 + 2 = 5. And the visualization or the idea in that book is that once he says 2 + 2 = 5, even though he knows it's not true, then he's broken. He knows in its head it's 4. Man, that's and you can look at his face, and the word that they'd use in psychology is the cognitive dissonance of saying out loud what he knows isn't true.
Leaving the individual completely dependent on the state's definition of reality itself. The result is a world in which even the privacy of one's own thought process is violated, where one may be found guilty of thought crime by talking in their sleep. And keeping a diary or having a love affair equals a subversive act of rebellion. This might sound like something that can only happen in totalitarian regimes. But Orwell was warning us about the potential for this occurring even in democratic societies. And this is why authoritarian alone does not Orwellian make. In his essay Politics and the English Language, he described techniques like using pretentious words to project authority, or making atrocities sound acceptable by burying them in euphemisms and convoluted sentence structures. But even more mundane abuses of language can affect the way we think about things. The words you see and hear in everyday advertising have been crafted to appeal to you and affect your behavior.
Oh, big time.
As have the sound bites and talking points of political campaigns, which rarely present the most nuanced perspective on the issues. And the way that we use ready-made phrases and responses, gleaned from media reports or copied from the internet, makes it easy to get away with not thinking too deeply or
Memes
questioning your assumptions.
on any political topic.
So the next time you hear someone use the word Orwellian, pay close attention. If they're talking about the deceptive and manipulative use of language, they're on the right track. If they're talking about mass surveillance and intrusive government, they're describing something authoritarian, but not necessarily Orwellian.
But possibly Orwellian, right? Because he's making the point that Orwell is actually making a somewhat deeper point around the potential dangers of mob rule and conformity, which he is. But he's definitely also making the point of like the police state, Big Brother, literally getting arrested for thinking the wrong thing. So it's any amazing. There's a reason why it's one of the most, well, in my opinion, one of the most important books. There's a lot of things going on.
And if they use it as an all-purpose word for any ideas they dislike, it's possible their statements are more Orwellian than whatever it is they're criticizing.
Yeah.
Words have
Good
the
point.
power to shape thought. Language is the currency of politics, forming the basis of society from the most common everyday interactions to the highest ideals. Orwell urged us to protect our language because ultimately, our ability to think and communicate clearly is what stands between us and a world where war is peace and freedom is slavery.
Exactly. Love you guys, man. Take care. Take care of yourself. Take care of your loved ones. All right. Better days ahead. Cheers.